Thank you guys for coming out. I just want to, first of all, thank Jim Keefe for giving me this opportunity. Jim, you put on a great event, you and your crew. I couldn't thank you more. I love what you're doing. Coming from the small business, small scrap, medium-sized, small operator world, I love seeing this type of event. You get to see the equipment work and everything else. Jim kind of gave me the opportunity to kind of form this panel and kind of discuss what was interesting to me, what I thought would be interesting to other people, and my goal was just to try and find some value for you guys to take away from it. That being said, I brought 3 people I do business with. One guy I do business with daily because he sits next to me and he's our CFO. A guy that I've done business with on multiple occasions, another guy I've done business with multiple occasions, but they all bring something unique to the party. So first of all, Blake Dorsett, I just want to give a little quick bio, and I just pulled this off the internet, but it kind of gives you a background. But 14 years ago, Blake and his partner John had a vision and have built a nationwide company specializing in mobile scrap processing and steel mill services. Partnering with steel mills, scrap companies, rail operators, ShearWorx, does everything from mobile shear cutting, torching, and logistics. Over the years, he's become a good friend of mine in the industry, and we've done business on multiple occasions over the last few years, and I finally got his ass on stage. Aldo Jordan, president of the Metals Agency. The founder and president, Aldo Jordan, has built a company that provides international metal commodity services, logistics, banking, and hedging. 20 years of ferrous and non-ferrous experience in small and large operations, 12 of them being with our former partner Schnitzer / Radius / Toyota. We'll see. I've got the opportunity to know Aldo very well over the years and have a lot of respect for his character, reputation, and knowledge. And I think you guys will gain that as well from this. And third, I got Brian. He's our CFO. He's been with me from the jump, like from it very initially. I think I was 1 year in. I think I had hired him because I was doing payroll, doing some of the accounting, and I was like, man, this isn't my cup of tea. I got to find somebody way smarter than me to do this stuff. So to put it plainly, I wouldn't be here without him. He's been key to designing and implementing all the systems that we run today, the back end operationally. That's kind of my wheelhouse, but anything on the back end, admin, that's his wheelhouse. So he brings a unique perspective on how we've grown our business, starting with basically just 2 small yards to where we're at today. He's been part of implementing that process, and I figured he would be able to bring a ton of value to this crowd as well. So, and I finally got his ass on stage. So I'm going to fire it up. I want to give everybody kind of a more individualized question, but feel free to chime in and do it the way you speak to the question. So Blake, all this beautiful equipment outside, all the salesmen, saleswomen out there pushing the equipment for owner-operators like myself. Hey, you should buy this. You need to have this in your yard. Give me a little bit of insight in why someone would want to hire somebody, an outside third-party operator, to bring in equipment and process their scrap versus own a piece of equipment themselves.
Yeah, well, I mean, anybody that, that's in this business like you guys, anybody can go out there and, buy this piece, buy that piece, so forth and so on. But one of the things that we look at is redundancy and uptime. Uptime's huge to us. And basically, we're not just bringing a piece of equipment with an operator and things like that. We bring the spare parts that are needed. There's been a lot of cases to where we've been at facilities, steel mills in general, big scrap yards, and it's even happened at your place a time or two. Yep. To where we just bring actual other types of equipment that's going to come in there, as in a shear, for instance. We're not just going to bring the shear. We're going to bring the operator that's going to be knowledge. This is what we do. This is all we do. It's nothing but processing. I mean, we've had guys from out at your location, from New York to Miami, all over the country. So when we look at the uptime, we're trying to look at the uptime as in, what does that look like? So what that looks like is if we're sitting there, shear breaks, a main pin, or whatever the case may be, even if it costs us to be able to get something back out there to keep that thing up and going, that's what we're going to do. I mean, that's sort of some of our core values. You know, do what we say we're going to do, even if it's going to cost us. So there's a lot of different ways to where if somebody like yourself, you know, you buy a shear, bring a shear, but when something happens to it, if you don't have backup, what's the downtime cost you?
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of the ways that we look at it. It's just not one piece. It's the service that we offer and the amount of equipment that we do have in our fleet, which goes good with, you know, the partnerships that you have that we create through our vendors. You know, it's being loyal to our vendors. And when we're loyal to them, they're going to take care of us as well.
Yeah.
You know, so that's one of the things that I think is one of the
For me, just to like lend a little clarity, you know, when I met you, I mean, we have multiple mobile shears, right? And I met when I was introduced to you in Israel years ago, and then I had built up a yard full of iron, you know, thousands of tons that I needed to process. I couldn't process them fast enough, and I was like, hey, even though I have the capability, it's going to take me months and months to get through this iron. And so then that's when you and I had started the conversation. I was like, hey, what do I got to do to get a shear out here? And basically help me get through it. And that was kind of our initial jump off. So I would like to say, you know, just to add to it, it's more of just to helping you get through some tons that you need to get through. It's not necessarily, you know, the only way to do it, because I still own a Genesis and LeBounties and shears, but I still, at some point, we all need help. And I think that's probably one of the bigger values that you guys bring to the table.
Yeah, that's for sure. You know, and most people at some places, you know, it's hard to find operators and things like that. You know, then one of the things is if you have an operator that's on a piece of equipment, is that something he does full time?
Yeah.
You know, usually he might be running something else, but it might be down. Then you're going to bring him over to run another piece of equipment. You know, it's just the knowledge that's going to be able to go into operating that piece of equipment and the efficiency that's going to come with it.
Aldo, every one of us has either dealt with a broker or are currently dealing with one or many, right? So for a little clarity on that, like what separates how you do business as a third-party administrator, third-party operator, compared to, say, like your traditional brokerage house?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, very, very different, first of all. And we interact a lot with brokers, but our services are exclusive to the people who are producing the scrap, right? So there's a level of transparency and flow of information. Our clients know exactly where we sell. We sell on their behalf. Every document, payment, banking information is done on their behalf exclusively. So we actually pull the curtain down on the connection between a supplier and the end consumer, and that's where we come into place. It's very different from a broker function where that curtain is up and there's a cost involved that sometimes is mostly not known. We hope to bring clarity to that transaction, and that's why we do it on an exclusive basis. Our services are geared for the industry that I have had the pleasure to live in for the last 20 plus years. When it comes to back office services, we're crazy enough to handle a lot of logistics on behalf of other people that don't want to do it or don't have the capacity to do it. But we're currently trading about 20 different countries overseas. And we can do from a small lines of credit, big hedging against copper indexes. All the tools that as large companies have staff and capacity for, we hope to bring those services to small, medium-sized operators.
And I think, and the reason I bring these things up is, you know, the topic of this is maximizing growth, you know, controlling your costs and capitalizing. One of the biggest things that when we talk about, say, cutting costs or whatever, I always say, like, you know what, you kind of have a rough idea what it takes to run your business financially, operationally. And I always like to say, instead of necessarily cutting costs, I think we're moving money, right? Like we take it from this bucket and move it to this bucket that's going to give us the most if we're really truly trying to grow our business. If we're just trying to cut because we want to sell our business 3 years from now and we want to pump the P&L and make it look great, then yeah, you're going to cut costs. You're going to get that thing down to the bone, try and drive as much margin and much money to the bottom line as you can. But that's really not a growth mechanism. If you're really trying to grow, you're trying to move money to where it's the most effective and where it's the most operationally going to drive the most top line revenue, which then eventually will get to the bottom line on a longer time horizon. So that's why I wanted these two up here, because it's not necessarily how do we get our costs all the way down. It's like how can we move the money to somewhere else that might enable us to grow and still be able to keep some margin or whatever, right? And
if I can to that point, right? I mean, being equipment or services or people, right? The universal law of trying to grow a business is that you have to make an investment on it, right? If you want to see it grow, you have to make that commitment, and sometimes you don't have the capital capacity to do it or the expertise. So great that you can highlight services from both an industrial, manpower, and services side, that there are more tools available than people sometimes think of.
yeah,
sure.
just know, the goal is to know that what tools are out there at your disposal so you can decide whether they make sense for you or not. So Brian, you and I talk about speed all the time. Like that's kind of our mantra. Like how do we go fast? How do we move quick? Because we kind of believe that speed is speed over everything, really. So notoriously, accounting in the back end office gets a bad rap for slowing things down operationally. I always say those are the no people. Hey, I want to buy this, no. I want to do this, no. You know, and that's truly what you need. At least someone in my position, I need someone that provides that checks and balances point, or else I would probably go a little bit crazy. But how have you been able to maintain the speed that we've grown at as the controller, and then keep up with the pace that I'm trying to push at operationally?
You're tough. Your pace is definitely tough to keep up with. I'd say that for once. But realistically, on the back end, on the office side, what we've been trying to do is become efficient and as lean as possible, so we can make those decisions on our end quick. You know, and how we've been doing that has been using third parties, looking at software that can maximize our employees' time, looking at different technologies, looking at AI, trying to become more efficient on the office end. The other thing I feel is really important that we do really well is just that communication between, say, the accounting side and the operations side. A lot of times, as your business is growing, you're hiring new people, you're hiring specialized people, and they get put in their little bubbles. So say on the accounting side, they're putting I'm looking at P&Ls, I'm looking at balance sheets all day, I'm doing debits and credits, and I don't see a lot of stuff on the operations side. Maybe I hear about the big stuff that happens here and there, but I just don't, I'm not filled in on what's going on. So Brett and I, what we do, and obviously this isn't for everybody, or maybe it's for nobody, but literally I sit 6 feet from him in the office. So every day I'm in the operations game, whether I want to be or not. So what that does for me is it's answering those why questions. So typically on the operations side, when operations goes to accounting and they ask to buy something or they ask to do this, usually in our industry, there's a lot of zeros behind that. So accounting has to say yes or no. Accounting's needing to ask those why questions. The why do you need it? And if you have a big organization, those why questions, that back and forth, is going to take a long time to do, just to get them up to speed on what operations is doing. So that's, in our scenario, we can skip, pretty much skip those why questions. Maybe I have a few, but I know what's going on in the business on the operations side. We get straight to the how questions. How are we going to do it? And we get straight to the, is there a better way to do it questions? And I get it. Not everybody, can sit next to each other, accounting and operations. So I think probably a strategy for most people is going to be have an accounting guy in your production meeting, to fill in on both sides. Say, hey, I know what's going on a daily basis, or have a collaboration meeting between accounting and operations just to skip that back and forth on getting accounting caught up with what's going on.
And I can speak to it on the operations side. Is I will also get pressure because I'm also the one selling the material. So I'll get pressure, like cash flow pressure, like, hey, you need to move this. Hey, you need to keep this, what's going on in the sales end? What kind of volume are you anticipating moving? So what I like about our relationship is that I get told no a lot. It's like I have my regular wife and then my work wife. I'm used to getting told no on a regular basis. So I'm comfortable with the no. But I will always say, but what about this? And what about this? So it forces you to be creative on a bunch of angles, right? So you're like, well, if I can't do it this way, can I do it with a third party? Can I go buy that, get that job? If I can hire this guy, come in, help me cut something up, it just makes you think about other options if you're getting told no. You know, one thing about our industry is we're pretty creative people in general. We're always used to trying to figure out a way to get something done or to navigate something that somebody already told us, no, we can't do. So if you're able to have that relationship and have that communication, I think it's super valuable. And it may not be sharing an office. It might be like, hey, we need to speak once a day, once a week, whatever, and say, I need to know where you're at. You need to know where I'm at, especially on a smaller, you know, business side. Like, you got to know cash flow, operations, they go hand in hand. So that's kind of where I think having a third party doesn't necessarily, you're not necessarily cutting costs, you're just putting it into a bucket that allows you to grow, and it's making you kind of think about how you're going to navigate it.
Well, and it lets you actually get outside and do some other things that you wouldn't be doing in the first place.
Absolutely.
You know, and, you know, just to piggyback on Brian's thing, you know, on the communication side of things, that's just like something we do every single week. You know, we're all together. You know, we got our CFO, I got marketing people. We're all together every single Tuesday. Every Tuesday we have production meetings, getting everybody in the know, just like you was talking about. So it's not, you know, we got operators that's out in the field that's reporting, doing down reports, that's reporting back to the area manager. Area manager is coming back to speak with me, or what we got, what is something that they need, you know. So it's very important, as you were speaking, to keep everybody in the know, to where when something does come up, everybody's in the loop. So when you're sitting there discussing if it's buying equipment or whatever it is, uptime, why it was up, why it was down, everybody's in the know. You can sit there and discuss it as a team. I know I don't know everything for sure. Yeah. And that's just like whenever we hire somebody, I want to hire somebody that's better at that job than what I am. You know, so bringing all those people together, and it makes a big difference.
I always say, like, create like yourself a central nervous system. Like, put those people together.
Absolutely.
You know, when it's 1 yard, it's easy. You're all kind of together. You get 2, 3, 4. We're at 10. So you start spreading that out. You got to still keep your core to group together, because those are all your people making big decisions. They kind of got to feed off of each other. So I got now just kind of some open-ended questions, and you guys just fill in where you want to. So when you think about these markets that we're in today, there's still a lot of consolidation going on. The bigger are getting bigger, super competitive for inventory in tight markets. So what innovative strategies have you guys deployed to drive revenue growth in your operations, and seen other operators do despite these challenging markets that you think was a good way to go about it?
I would say that for us as a company, as a service, but also the interaction with a lot of the clients that we have, we're trying to help them develop a lot more speed. When they're small, they can react a lot faster to changes in the marketplace. Customer service to industrial accounts is a big one. And I think that sometimes can get missed in the whole scheme of competing against big competition that have 20 plus yard, or they have a lot of backing behind them. Customer service still matter. It still matter a lot. Relationships still matter. Quick service, answering phone calls are things that, as we see all these development of AI technology, there's still something to be said for somebody picking up the phone and solving a problem for somebody. So we have a lot of clients that we're trying to help them kind of develop that model, because they can compete more formidable in that territory than trying to scale to somebody who has 20 different yards.
So how do you help somebody with the speed component of their business?
We try to, they hire us a lot of times to be able to come in and fill in some gaps on what they have on services that they're lacking, right? So that's one of the services that we provide. We can staff up for accounts payable, accounts receivable, logistics. But for example, right now, we were just dealing with a client who wants to have a good relationship with an end consumer, but the credit line is their banking doesn't allow it. So we were able to facilitate a credit line through the Import-Export Bank of the United States to secure that transaction going forward. And now they have a venue that they can sell into on a steady basis going forward, and the industrial account is theirs to have for the foreseeable future.
Okay, I like it.
I know on our side, during those times of the slow times and things like that, we're sitting there looking at all the customers we got. What are some of the problems that they're actually having that we're not currently doing? So we got a proprietary technology now that we've been working on for a good while. So we've been trying to roll that out. It's been taking a lot of R&D on it. So during those times, that's something that we try to look at, to try to see what's a step above that we can go that might solve some problems that we're not being able to solve. So that's probably one of the biggest things on our end, is just to try to look at other opportunities and things like, especially with all of the, the greener that's going on and all the steel mills, the smokes and all that kind of good stuff. So that's one of the things that we've been looking at doing.
So I'd say on our end, there's a serial entrepreneur that works for our business. I'm not going to name any names in this one. But typically what we're doing is, when the markets are good, is we're going out and we're looking for different areas that we can get into that we have advantages in. Multiple advantages in. So, I don't know if anybody knows, recently we just started up a tire recycling part of our business. And we looked at that and we said, hey, these are the advantages that we have. We had a lot of the assets in place. We had a lot of the contacts in place. We had enough to say we can do this, and there was a need in our market for it. So what that does for us, and gives us a little more competitive advantage on maybe just somebody that just owns scrap yards, is we're getting into these other markets and businesses that maybe have a little more stable cash flow. So on the tire side, and I don't know if you watch Brett videos, we have a lot of different businesses that realistically, and that's calculated in why we're doing that. And that's to stabilize our cash flow. Scrap, everybody here knows its cash flow is not stable at all. It's the opposite. So for us, our strategy has been to do that, to get into these businesses that we are competent in. We're not trying to start a bar and grill as much as Brett has wanted to. That's one that
more
I've
of the
said
bar,
no to.
more of the bar part, but yeah, less
we're-
grill, more bar.
We're doing businesses that we're comfortable in, and it's smoothing our cash flow out, to make it so where when the scrap market does take that 50% dive, we're maybe a little bit more comfortable than your average guy. We can do a little bit more. So.
Okay. Blake, Aldo, how can companies use your services to expand into new markets? And what I like about this is the growth piece, right? Like, what do you guys do? And you just spoke to it as far as opening up new consumers. But how can you expand into new segments?
For us, the most clear one is be able to sell and market their non-ferrous metals, which is probably what we specialize mostly on, directly to the end consumer, right? Right now, or forever, this industry is a very tight margin kind of business, commodity driven, and that gives small operators an opportunity to have exposure and place their packages on a relationship that they haven't had before, right? So we can certainly do that. Being in the industry for so long, we understand where we can go to maximize that quality package that somebody produces. And a lot of times that gives them an expansion of services that they just didn't know, because the way they used to trade before, that curtain in between, I call it, doesn't let them visualize what's in the other side, right? But understanding where they can go and how they can maximize that gives them a lot of opportunities to grow.
So to your point, I mean, I started posting stuff on LinkedIn years ago, and the whole reason I did is because I was trying to find new consumers for our scrap. I mean, that was one of the biggest reasons I started doing it. And then it evolved over the years into other things, but the main reason was I only had probably 6 consumers that I was dealing with. And so I wanted to show people, I knew there was a fair amount of, buyers and consumers that were kind of, at the time, like cruising around on LinkedIn and kind of trying to make connections. And I just didn't have those connections. So I just said, hey, I started posting, hey, I sold a load of wheels today, and here's who I sold them to. And most people were like, you telling people who you're selling scrap to? And I was like, yeah, I don't give a shit. Like, this is who I sold to. Yep. But I wanted people to know that we're in the market for that item. Hey, that guy's selling, 3 loads of wheels this month. Maybe we should reach out to him and see if we could buy a load of wheels. And what it did is it opened up my customer base. And going to your point, what I like about what you're doing is if I'm the guy selling all the material for our businesses, and I can go to and lean on say a third party like yourself, and say, hey, I've got these items, can you help me find homes for them, right? I don't have to start a 3-year journey on LinkedIn to get there, right? I can lean on somebody else and say, hey, you've got consumers, you've got options, go look at this. This maybe is something for you, right? Especially if you're producing a specific grade or even a common grade. But it's an option that you should look at and think about that really can allow yourself some growth without necessarily having to do it the way I did it. There's a quicker way, I guess. At least another option is where I'm going with that. How about you, Blake?
Brett, it's some of the things we've already discussed, prior. It's just like at your yard. You bring in a bunch of material, you're already trying to get caught up on what you already had. There's probably some bigger jobs you could have went out and got, but in the beginning, you probably wouldn't have been able to do that without trying to get a third party to come in there and help. And I think that's one of the things that we, try to give the help to. If it comes to torch guys, material handlers, or even shears, it gives a company the ability to be able to go out and get more, to still know that they're going to be able to process it. Is it some of them we started on short terms, hey, we're going to be there 2 to 3 months. Next thing you know, things have started going so good, they're able to get more, they're able to expand their customer base because now they can take the volume. Some of them were still there 2 years after,
Yeah.
So it comes to those type things, or even off-site jobs, to where we can come in, just do a one-stop shop type deal, to be able to allow them to get some of those type jobs that they couldn't get. We just got a customer right now, we just started on, they got a big power plant things they're working on. They knew they couldn't handle the volume. So we was able to put a plan together that makes sense for everybody. Sometimes third parties, shorter terms might not be the right, way to go. But if we're able to pile material up or whatever to make sense bring a third party in to be able to help out. And I think that's where we kind of add good value to.
And I think the biggest thing that we always talk about is, cash flow is king, right? And especially in this industry and especially in the volatility. So everybody would like to say, yeah, I'm selling into the same market I'm buying in, which is great if you've got enough equipment to service it on your own. But let's say you get into a big job, or let's say when I called you, we had this big cleanup. There's a guy outside of town who'd been sitting on 5,000 ton in his backyard, and he wanted out of there, and he wanted out at this price. Well, I can get it out. I got the logistics and the trucks, and I'll get the shit out, and I'll get it to my yard. But what I can't do is get it all processed in that month that I'm trying to buy it into. And I think that's where when I called you and I said, hey, I got a pile that I need to get through, and there's no way I'm going to get through and keep up with just my regular flow. And I think that's where we talk about, on the growth side, and is, hey, you can go out and get that customer. There's a level of comfort available to you to go out and get that. And I'm not saying don't own your own equipment. I'm not saying don't own a lot of equipment, because I own a fair amount. But what I am saying is that maybe there's an opportunity, if you need that piece for a month, for a year or whatever,
that's
then
right.
that's where I think that's where you guys can really have some.
And it
some
gives
big
you the
effect.
option to grow, like we said. It's allowed you to grow your customer base that you wouldn't be able to get if you was just relying on what you had.
Yeah. So what do you see, Brian, as far as when you're looking at it and we're talking about, hey, should we use a third party to do this, or how do we do that? What are the advantages and disadvantages that you see on the third party side?
On our end, I would say the advantage side is just the ability to quickly scale up by using third parties. But even more important, I think, in the scrap industry specifically, is the ability to quickly scale down. With a market that turns real quick, which position would you rather be in? The guy that can scale down by making a couple phone calls and saying, hey, I don't need your services for the next couple months? Or the guy that went out and bought $1 million shear that has fixed debt on it and hired 12 more people for his admin staff, right? I mean, which one's a little bit easier to scale down on? So that's kind of our thought on that. The disadvantage side is obviously you're giving up control of a piece of your business. And realistically, the way we think about it is we're willing to give up control of a piece of our business that isn't our core competency. It's not our competitive advantage to do that. So like an example of that would be, outsourcing your payroll. Like for us, we can outsource our payroll because doing payroll in-house doesn't give me an advantage over this guy or that guy. It's just, maybe that's just the way I like to do it.
We look at also like, we talked about this, one of our core competencies is our logistic and our transport, right? And some people choose to say, hey, in my market, there's enough end dumps, there's enough trucks, there's enough logistic capacity. It's not a core competency for me to run my own trucks. Okay, because I'm gonna buy a shear and I'm gonna cut and I'm gonna be the guy. I talked to a guy yesterday that he basically processes rebar. That's his sweet spot. He goes, I'm good at cutting rebar. Okay, so he knows what his core competency is. He may farm out third-party logistics, trucking. For us, that's not it. That is our sweet spot because we're in Idaho and end to end, our yards are 450 miles apart and everything in between. So logistics is part of our core. Like we need to be good at that. Now,
so on the logistics side, we really don't third party that out on our hand. So we're out there. That's where we're investing our capital is in trucks. In our logistics side of our business, because for us, our customer service, our ability to, when we tell you our truck's going to be there on Tuesday, it's going to be there on Tuesday. That's not to say we don't use third-party logistics, but we use the third-party logistics for kind of the stuff that's out of our wheelhouse, stuff that's out of our lanes, hauling batteries and stuff like that maybe we're not good at.
And Brian brought a very good point. We think about third-party services always when like you're scaling up, right? It certainly does in utilization, but there's a lot of flexibility also like throttling down, right? You can modify the market, the intake, the manpower, changes on staffing. We recently got hired by a company who lost their logistics person who was dealing specifically with India shipments, trying to find somebody, train somebody, explain to them what they're doing and how to do it. You can imagine that can go on for months. We came in, we provided the service. The person who was on maternity leave came back and, we can hand the service back to them. So that gives you a lot of flexibility when markets go down. You need to sometimes hankering down and you need to spread out on some of those services. So that's a great point about utilizing it in the, when the markets are not doing great, sir.
And realistically, it could just be a bridge, between the time that, maybe you do need to outsource it now, but then later on down the road, as you grow, if you're in the growth mode, maybe you need to bring that back into your business. Maybe
it lets you eliminate your risk. Yeah. Basically, it's what it does. Instead of going out there and buying, $700,000-$800,000 piece of equipment, we're going to be busy for 3 or 4 months. After that, who knows? Just like what we talk about, the way the flow does. So it's able to let you guys eliminate risk and things like that, the way we see it on our side.
And I've heard it said before, and I've always been a firm believer. I'm not an or guy. I'm an and guy. I want this and that. I want to look at my options all the ways. Because it's not, you don't have to just pick a lane and say in that lane when it comes to how you're processing or how you're marketing or how you're selling or your admin side. I think it's more of an and than an or.
For this day and age of competition, you have to be very flexible with that and take opportunity of that. Because doing one thing sometimes is just not enough. When I had the pleasure to visit you guys up there at the plant, all these complementary services that you're bringing together, essentially, it's just bringing more of that expansion of the recycling into tires, catalytic converters, copper. And no, not everybody has that scale, but there are tools and services available to be able to kind of start scaling up, for sure.
So everybody here's heard AI this and AI that, and everything is going to be done by a robot and whatever else. But is there anything that the three of you have done to put to use, like within your business lately, that's enabled you to control costs or promote growth, that it has anything to do with AI or anything that are you seeing any advantage on the admin side or on your side or your side? I guess I also kind of have in here that something that might have once seemed unrealistic that now seems like a real possibility.
For us, specifically as a company, I think that the biggest change has been on the document management side. We deal a lot with Europe clients, documents that come up in German. We can translate those very quickly into several different languages. And the automation, of course, is a lot faster than we can do it manually. So that and the logistics part has been able to really help us a lot. I don't know that we have fully understand how to utilize the tool, but certainly right now, document management and logistics.
How about you, Blake? You got robots running any of your shears yet?
Only robots we got running some torches. But I mean, we're going through a project right now, with so many guys that we have, employees that we have, we're so spread out across the country. We got different systems that they have to do on a daily basis. It's all their uptime, downtime, all their maintenance pictures and all that. So one of the things that AI has been able to help us do is conform all of those systems into one. So that's probably one of the biggest deals, and it saves a lot of time. You're talking about, you're 180, 200 employees out there in the field, you're talking about saving 15, 20 minutes a time. That's a big difference in the way we do things, for sure.
So basically saving on like some of the admin costs.
Absolutely. Okay. Instead of having one of our admins in the office trying to look at 7 or 8 reports, now she's got more capabilities. So what can we get her involved in? It's going to free up some more of her time. And plus it does a lot, really big difference for our guys out in the field.
And I kind of lean towards, when I look at it is, I think it allows you to put more firepower behind your production guys, right?
Absolutely.
If you're not having to soak up a ton of SG&A and you don't have a ton of back-end office support, now all of a sudden, I always say, at the beginning, you're just moving that money maybe from the back end to the front end, and it allows you to be a little stronger on that side if you can be a little bit more leaner on the SG&A side. So how about you, Brian? I know we've worked through a few things, but go ahead.
We've really put, like I said before, we've really put a lot of effort into making our back end really efficient in collecting data. So what we're working on right now is, and what AI is really good at, is analyzing that data. In the scrap business, we're collecting all our purchases, all our sales, and for us is our deal we're working on now is auditing all of those purchases. So essentially, we used to have, a person that would literally daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly audits on our purchases for the day. They're spending 4 or 5 hours a week doing that. So right now, we're actually in the middle of developing it to where having AI create us a program that we can just put our purchases in and turn that 4 or 5 hours literally into 30 seconds. So for us, like Brett kind of alluded to, on the back end, it's making huge strides in just efficiency on our end.
And really the purpose, for us, is just for you guys, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday morning, but just spotting anomalies in your purchase reports, something that looks out of whack, something that looks like it either got fat fingered or whatever, so that you can see, or something that looks really too consistent, right? Too consistent of a price, too consistent of a volume, just too consistent for either that customer or just the way your purchases have looked over all the years, right? So you can basically back test it or means test it against previous purchases and previous reports and say, does this work? Is it something, did we just pick up a new account? Why is the volume significantly higher here, but we're not seeing it on the sales side? And just allowing that data collection that you've either had in place or you're putting in place to really let those systems just really dig it out for you versus having someone with a good eye or a keen eye spot something that doesn't look traditional, right? And it will find them, and it'll find them, and it finds it quick, and we've dug through a lot of info that way. So I got 2 more I'm going to get through, and I'm trying to leave a little bit of time at the end in case anybody's brave enough to ask a question. So the scrap market's notorious for fluctuating prices, except for this year, where ferrous feels like it hasn't budged. Maybe a little bit. Maybe next month it looks like it's coming. But what are some things that businesses can do to prepare for ship markets that might come up and enable that business to execute without getting too far over their skis?
Brett, I'd go on our side. It's planning. As in if you're looking at buying, whatever, if you're buying blades or whatever you're doing, buying in bulk. So that's the way we try to look at things. We try to buy in bulk and try to, because you don't want to get too far over, like you said, over your skis. So what can we do prior to that to get ready for that time? And that's some of the things that we look at, no matter what it is, type products that we use, if it's anything to even on our torch side of things, even if it's on the material handler side, whatever piece of equipment or anything that we run, we always try to look at ahead of time before when that time does come.
Yeah.
You know, so we always try to look at, you know, buying things in bulk and getting ready for that period.
We like to plan for 85% of what we think is going to happen. And we try to manage that 15% variable up or down. No matter what, how good the plans are, you know that those are good until you get hit. So we never assume that we're going to be able to manage all of that, but we certainly try to be very flexible and pivot up or down that variable. For us, it has helped us that we're a small company. Scrap is what we do, and keeping us very flexible with what we do. We have gone into some services more of a demand from the market and less as a design of what we thought that we were going to do. But we certainly found a solution for clients that we can able to go in there, and we're very happy to do that.
What about you, Brian?
You know, I'd say for us, you know, when the scrap markets are good, we make a concerted effort to do all the things that we've talked about. We make a concerted effort to get efficient, to make sure we're not getting bloated in our SG&A, make sure we're not, you know, doing stuff we shouldn't be doing essentially. So that when the market does turn, we're not scrambling to get efficient. We're already there. We've done the work already.
I think for us traditionally is we try and get as lean as we can when the market is as good as it is. When the market's high, as like when we're trying, like we kind of look at it as that's when we're trying to get as lean as we can operationally. SG&A, like we keep it tight because we know that the greatest opportunities for growth isn't when the market is $500 a ton. It's when it's 200 and either people are selling out or they can't keep up with the customer service or they have to cut good people. And that's when we look for those times and we really try and lick our chops for the bad days because we've tried to do all the work. It's super easy when the market is good to just be like, yeah, we're making money, we can do this, and we can have these corporate retreats here, and we can spend this money there. And I think, you know, Nick's in the audience, he probably speak to it as well, as when those times are happening, like we're gearing up because we know that's when we're gonna be able to put gas on the fire because we know the downside's coming. It happens significantly, and it goes quick, and it seems like that's when it's when your best equipment deals are going to come along. It's when you'll be able to buy your equipment the cheapest. You know, in 2000, when the 2015 market hit, that's when we actually bought out our partners. We were 50% owned by Citrus Steel at the time. That's when we bought them out. You know, in 2010, when the commercial real estate market hit and it took a shit in 2009-10, that's when we put our Boise facility in. We just kind of wait until it gets bad, and that's when we try and jump. So, but you can't do that if you don't put your house in order, you know, to begin with. And I think that's what I want to kind of emphasize. Like you guys, buy in bulk, get ready.
Absolutely.
Like put yourself in a position. You don't know when it's going to come, but you know it is going to come. And so it's just a matter of getting yourself ready to roll. So I want to leave off on this last question, and then I want to open it up if anybody has any questions. And if you don't want to ask it on the microphone, that's fine. Come find one of us, and we'll answer it. But either way, this is what I got. So looking at the medium to long-term economic landscape, I'd probably say 1 to 3 to 4 years. Is there any advice you'd give to the small, medium-sized metal recycling companies on prioritizing growth opportunities versus cost-cutting to ensure long-term sustainable growth?
I guess I can go first on that one this time.
Okay.
So our strategy on that, you know, has always been when times are good, we focus on growing our balance sheet. So, you know, our strategy, like we've talked about, is we go out, we start new businesses. We go buy real estate when it makes sense. We're growing that balance sheet. What we're not doing is taking a bunch of distributions. If you're trying, I mean, there's a time to take distributions. It's not when you're trying to grow your business. So we're putting all that money back into the business when times are good. What that does is it sets us up for when times are bad and your P&Ls don't look as good, but your balance sheet still looks pretty good. So you can go out and you can still get financing. And you can go out and like what Brett was talking about, that's where the deals are. When the market's bad, that's when the opportunities present themselves. Like for our business, 90% of our business has been built on the bad markets, because that's when the opportunities are. And we've positioned ourselves with our balance sheet specifically to get there.
I think a lot of focus is on the P&L, because it's such a cash-intense, cash flow forward business. But I think when you're really putting it together, when we focused on it early, we always kept a really strong balance sheet. So we kept good quality assets. We owned our equipment. We owned our property. We kept quality assets basically as kind of our fortress. So knowing that if the times got tough, we'd have something to go to a bank and go loan against, and lean against, borrow against, so that we could make that acquisition on the growth side. But a lot of emphasis gets focused on the P&L, and rightfully so. Like that's got to match up. It's got to make sense. But if you can put some effort and time and thought process into the balance sheet, knowing you've got some assets in place that you can go to work on if you need to, that's what I think you're alluding to is a super big driver for you on the growth side versus just cutting costs. So how about you, Blake?
Brett, we put a lot of time into our people, all of our operators, our managers, so throughout the time on the growth side of things, we try to invest through those guys to allow them to, when we do get to the point to hiring the next level, we've already invested into the guys that we've already have. So we've kind of trained through them through the way to build them up. They know the ins and outs of the business. They know the systems, to be able to move those guys up. Another thing is on the proprietary technology that we have is trying to put some of that kind of things out there to build for the future. It's not try to go all at once, in the first 6 months, trying to go out, throw money to it. It's trying to get all the information we can, get everybody on board, and try to just slow roll it, because I know it's going to work. It's working as we speak, but sitting there trying to not jeopardize our costs and throwing it all at once, for when the bad time does come that we discussed, if you do that. So just do that in steps to get everybody on the same page, to be able to withstand that growth in the next 3 years.
I like that you went the people route, because there's we were talking a lot about equipment and finance and money, but we've talked about it a lot in the past, is the people is how you build your business, right?
Absolutely.
You can't run a shear right now, at least not today, without a good operator, at least run it efficiently, right?
Absolutely.
So, that's a great point, is your willingness to invest in your people is what's really going to set you apart when the times get tough and you've got a good crew, a good solid crew that can get you through that time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think for us also has been, as a small company, we also feel the market changes, right? And that affects us. But the investment on people, when things got a little slow in the copper sector for us in our business into Europe, we invested a lot into AI training. And it's very easy sometimes to peel off the P&L and let go a few people. And certainly there are occasions where you need to do that. But we felt that if we do that investment, as the market come back, it will pay dividends for us, and it has. The days of, as I see it, from working at a large company before, is, it's very seldomly that peeling people off the P&L is going to improve your markets, right? It's a universal law that is hard to bend, and you and I have talked about that before many times.
Yeah.
But especially these days, we're going through this cycle where a new generation of people are coming into the marketplace for jobs. We are not the top choice for employment. It's very hard to retain people, especially good people. And the more that you can provide education, resources, help to those who are in the organization, the better you're going to be off long term.
I like it. All right, I got 7 minutes left. If anybody's got a question, please step up to one of the microphones and fire away.
Joy of session. So maximize growth, control cost, overtime. My controller, and I want your opinion, but I want everybody's opinion, always comes to me and says, "Oh, did you see how much overtime we did?"
You've heard that.
Oh man, I love it.
And it drives me crazy, because if my overtime is producing revenue and moving material that would not make it to the monthly financials, I don't care. But how do you control overtime? And what's your philosophy about when and when not to use overtime? I'd like to hear from all of you. Thanks.
I guess my thought on that, and that is me, I go to him and say, hey, our overtime over here is getting a little ridiculous. And for me, that's our opportunity to go, hey, what can we do over there to be more efficient? What processes are we doing at that yard that's causing that overtime? Is it, maybe it is we got this big influx of scrap and we got to get through it. Or there may be a systemic problem over there that's like, hey, they're only doing this amount of scrap, but there's a process problem. So that's what for us. It's kind of what starts the discussion.
Yeah, I always say it's like AI spotting the anomaly in your purchase report, right? It may just be because somebody been saving up copper for a year and they brought in a big load. Hey, the material's there, the price is right, we know the customer, it's good. I think your controller, somebody spotting your overtime and saying, hey, why is this yard's overtime high? I get that question a lot, that's why I smile, because sometimes I'm like, I don't know, let me look into it. Like, let me do some digging, right? Or sometimes I'll be like, oh no, we just bought all this material, we're trying to get through it, I got a contract that's due at the end of the month, I gotta get that shit out, we gotta stay late and cut. Then it's an easy answer, we move on, right? But if your controller's doing their job, they should be bringing those. And that's why we were saying, like, keeping your controller and your operations person like tight and in tune with each other. It allows you that opportunity to solve that question quick, not wait till a month later and be like, yeah, we would have made money last month, but our overtime was high, for a whole month. Well, why didn't anybody look into it? Well, because we just found out now.
I think on our side of things, when it comes to the overtime, when we're going to a job site, let's just say, John, we're at your location. I've never been there, but I've seen it. When we come there, you got a lot of material on the ground. One of the things that we look at, we're going to come to you guys and say, all right, what's the hours you guys work? They're going to be, all right, we're going to work 9 hours a day. Guess what? There's going to come a time to where material is going to continue coming in to where we got to say, all right, guys, we need to work 10 to 12 hours a day. One of the ways I try to look at it is if we're coming in there and there's 10, 12, 15, how many ever 1,000 tons on the ground, what could we have done before it got to that point? So we're going to have overtime in there, but going forward, we always try to look at it and say, okay, now since we established this relationship, this partnership, before it gets to this point, we can go on and work a little bit towards that to get it on down to where it's not a rush. Let's try to get it out and throw all the hours or work 7 days a week type deal on our
Which is a good point, from your standpoint, but even just as an owner-operator, like if you can identify what you could do to clean it up, like clean up that overtime ahead of time, then all of a sudden it puts you in a better position the next month. So
it comes to communication on our side that would allow the overtime to be what it is. How do we communicate with the customer, working out a strategy, me relying on my area managers to work out a strategy to be able to limit the overtime, so that's sort of how we do it on our end.
A lot of operators think that avoiding overtime is like a goal, right? But to John's point, it's also a revenue generator, right? Managing scrap yards in my past, I usually start really taking a serious look when overtime is 15+% of payroll over 45 days. That starts signaling to me that I probably have a longer need than a temporary one. And that metric certainly is not for everyone. But when it starts peaking between 15-20%, and if it's more than that, it's easy to identify that you have an additional need for manpower than you currently are not filling on the operation side.
I like it. Anybody else? Got 2 minutes and 30 seconds left. Fire away, Stu.
All right, so I've got to go on my toes here. So for me, I think when we talk about growth and we can look at costs, etc., I think margin, we were speaking briefly yesterday, I think about it, margin is absolutely vital to grow your business. How do you ensure that your team is buying correctly and you do have margin in all the scrap that you're buying? And that obviously includes upgrading the correct material, never downgrading, etc.
Great question. I can let I mean, you're obviously, that's kind of your wheelhouse too.
It is.
Then I can go.
We've done certain projects, but quickly data and removing metrics that can tell you something because that's what the bias of the data is. But quickly speaking, we just recently did an analysis of a company's commercial operation, and we did not a volume-driven data kind of analysis, but more of a profit-driven data analysis. And you can see how they assumed a certain team on their members are very profitable when it's actually the reverse. So it's actually measuring the right things helps a lot. And a lot of times I think that a lot of companies are probably measuring more tilted towards volume for the sake of volume than actually profit margin.
I think in our industry, like if you're a small operator, you're probably the guy that's controlling the buy side is probably working the sell side too. And as we've grown, obviously, where I used to have a lot more influence on the buy side, now that's Nick's job. But Nick and I, it goes back to like that central nervous system or keeping your key decision makers that are driving big parts of your business close. So I share an office with the accountant, the logistics manager, the guy buying the material, and then me on the operations side, so that we can sit there and communicate on a daily basis. So every time I get a sale, every load that I've sold, I send to him an email and say price, volume. So as the market, expands, detracts, whichever direction it's going to go, he's very in tune with on the buy side. We have our set margins. We say this is what it costs us to bale. This is what it costs us to shear. This is what it costs us to box. This is what it costs us, soup to nuts. Make sure it's there, because here's the sale price. Now you know you have no excuse. The buy price needs to get underneath that, plus wherever, and then it's his job really to train your guys and gals on the scale head or wherever else in the recycling center on the individual buy side. Here's where we need to be. Here's how you need to buy, and it's a lot of training. It's a lot of communicating to your point. And the more yards you get, the more communication that needs to happen. All right, that's time. Thank you for the 2 questions. If you guys have anything, by all means, feel free to get a hold of us, talk to us. These guys I know will be happy to help. Thanks, fellas.
Thank you.